"You're throwing money away on your kids," my dad insisted. "Your sister needs it more." I looked at my daughter's eyes and said my family comes first. Now, they're furious that I chose my children over them. Hey Reddit. My father has always had a way of making me feel like no matter what I do, it's never enough. Growing up, it was always about my sister, how much she needed, how much she deserved, and how the family had to rally around her every time she found herself in trouble, which was often. She was the golden child, the one who, despite her mistakes, could do no wrong in his eyes. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one, the one expected to fend for myself because I wasn't the one who needed saving. It didn't matter that I worked hard, built a stable life, and made sure my own family had everything they needed. To him, that just meant I could afford to do more for my sister. So when my father sat me down one evening, his face set in that familiar expression of disappointment, I already knew what was coming before he even opened his mouth. He sighed heavily, as if it pained him to say what he was about to say, and then he laid it all out. My sister was in trouble again. She had lost her job, was months behind on rent, and was on the verge of being evicted. She had called him in tears, saying she had nowhere to go, and he, of course, had promised her that the family would help. By family, he meant me. I listened in silence, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. It was the same story I had heard a dozen times before. My sister's life was a never-ending cycle of bad decisions, reckless spending, and expecting everyone else to pick up the pieces when it all fell apart. She had borrowed money from me before, promising to pay it back, but I never saw a single cent. I had covered her rent when she got evicted the last time, and within months, she had found herself in the same situation again. Every time she needed something, I was the first person they came to, and every time I gave in, she took it for granted. But this time, things were different. I had a wife and kids who depended on me. My daughter was growing up fast, and she deserved a secure future. I had plans for her education, for her opportunities in life, and I wasn't about to take anything away from her just because my sister couldn't get her life together. I had made up my mind long before my father even finished talking. I shook my head and told him that I couldn't do it. My family came first. I wasn't going to take money away from my children's future just to bail my sister out again. The look on his face was a mixture of shock and fury. He couldn't believe I was saying no. He scoffed, acting as if I had just committed some kind of betrayal. He told me that my sister needed the help more than my kids did. That she was in crisis, while my kids already had everything they needed. That I was being selfish, turning my back on my own blood. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I told him that my sister was in crisis because she refused to take responsibility for her life. That I had helped her too many times, and each time, she wasted the opportunity. I reminded him of all the times I had paid her rent, covered her bills, even let her stay in my home when she had nowhere else to go. And every single time, she had taken it for granted, spent money she didn't have, and ended up right back where she started. He didn't want to hear it. He was already shaking his head before I even finished talking. In his eyes, it didn't matter what my sister had done in the past. What mattered was that she was struggling now, and I was refusing to help. He accused me of abandoning family, of being cold-hearted, of forgetting where I came from. And then came the final blow. He told me that if I was going to choose my wife and kids over my sister, then I was no longer his son. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I didn't let it show. I just stared at him, realizing that no matter what I did, I would always be the villain in his eyes unless I gave in. But I wasn't going to. Not this time. I told him that if that was how he felt, then so be it. I wasn't going to apologize for putting my own family first. The fallout was immediate. My father stormed out, furious, and within hours, the rest of the family started blowing up my phone. My mother called, crying, begging me to reconsider. My uncles and aunts sent messages telling me I was being cruel, that my sister needed me, that family should always come first. Even my cousins chimed in, telling me I should just help her to keep the peace. But as I sat at home that night, watching my daughter work on her homework, I knew I had made the right decision. She was my priority. She was the one who deserved everything I could give her, not my sister who had wasted every chance she had been given. The next day, I found out my father had gone behind my back and told my sister everything. She sent me a long, angry message calling me selfish, accusing me of abandoning her in her time of need. She even threw in how I had it easy because I was married and had a stable job, while she had to struggle alone, as if that was somehow my fault. I didn't respond. I knew it wouldn't make a difference. No matter what I said, it wouldn't be enough. Now, my family is furious with me. They've started excluding me from family gatherings, acting like I don't exist. My father won't even speak to me. And honestly, I don't care anymore. For the first time in my life, I'm standing my ground. And I won't back down. The days that followed were filled with silence. Not a single call, not a single text from my father. It was as if, overnight, I had become a stranger to my own family. My mother would still reach out, her messages filled with guilt-tripping reminders of how much my sister was suffering, how she had no one else to turn to, how I was letting my father down. But I didn't budge. I had spent my entire life playing the role they expected of me, the reliable one, the one who always cleaned up the mess. I was done. Then, a week later, my sister showed up at my house. I opened the door to find her standing there, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of anger and desperation. She didn't ask if she could come in. She just pushed past me and walked inside like she owned the place. My wife, who had been sitting on the couch, shot me a look, but I motioned for her to stay put. I turned to my sister, already knowing what was coming. She wasted no time. She went on a rant about how she couldn't believe I was being so heartless, how her father had always told her that family takes care of each other, how she was struggling while I was living in a nice house with a good job and a stable life. She looked around my home as if I had somehow stolen all of this from her, as if I hadn't worked my ass off to build the life I had. I let her finish before I spoke. I told her I wasn't responsible for her problems, that I had helped her enough times, and that I wasn't going to sacrifice my children's future for her mistakes. I reminded her of every time I had bailed her out, of how each time she had promised to do better, only to end up right back in the same situation. She didn't like that. She started yelling, accusing me of abandoning her, of thinking I was better than her. She brought up every petty grievance she could think of from childhood, twisting everything to make herself the victim. When that didn't work, she turned to tears, trying to guilt me into changing my mind. But I had seen it all before. The fake remorse, the empty promises, the emotional manipulation. I told her no. For the final time. That was when she showed her true colors. The tears dried up instantly, and her face twisted with pure rage. She screamed that I was selfish, that I was a terrible brother, that I would regret this. She even had the audacity to call me a failure as a son, parroting the exact words my father had used. Then she stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard that the walls shook. My wife came over and wrapped her arms around me. She didn't have to say anything. She knew what this meant. That night, my father finally called. His voice was cold, distant. He didn't ask me how I was doing, didn't even acknowledge that I had been cut off from the family. Instead, he went straight to the point. He told me that my sister had nowhere to go, that she was struggling more than ever, and that this was my last chance to do the right thing. I took a deep breath, my grip tightening around the phone. I told him that my answer hadn't changed. The silence that followed was heavy. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, my father told me that if I was going to turn my back on my sister, then I was turning my back on the family. That as far as he was concerned, I was no longer his son. I should have felt devastated. I should have felt broken. But instead, I felt free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't carrying their burdens. I wasn't bending over backward to fix my sister's mistakes. I wasn't chasing after my father's approval, an approval he was never willing to give unless I was sacrificing myself for his favorite child. I was done. I told him that if that was how he felt, then I wished him well. Then I hung up the phone. That was the last time I spoke to my father. It's been months now. My sister never reached out again. I heard through distant relatives that she ended up bouncing from couch to couch, burning bridges with whoever took her in, just like she always did. My father still refuses to acknowledge my existence. My mother calls sometimes, but it's always the same conversation, her begging me to make things right, to apologize, to be the bigger person. But I have nothing to apologize for. And for the first time in my life, I feel at peace. Because when I look at my daughter's face, when I see my wife smiling as we sit together as a family, I know I made the right choice. My family comes first. Always. And I will never apologize for that.